Hey y'all, Chris from Keyfarm. First of all, thank you for clicking on this how-to video. Now some people may be wondering, Chris, why are you so passionate about putting these small engines in a pickup truck or other vehicles? I've put these in a few different things. It's pretty interesting. You may want to check out the channel. Alright, we live in a world where a utility vehicle around the farm, man, they are expensive. John Deere Gators are expensive. Polaris Rangers are expensive. Really, really nice, really, really cool, really, really handy, but really, really pricey. So I think that this is a true viable option. I'm not talking about rock climbing, I'm not talking about trail riding, I'm talking about a utility vehicle around the property. I'm thinking you can pick you up an old pickup truck for $500–600. Speaking of the 18 horse, I got it for $400. You can put you a $400 18 horse. You're still less than $1,000. By the time you buy shafts and sprockets and all that stuff, you're looking at $1,100 or $1,200 for a viable utility vehicle. Right now, the way this truck sets, I can drive it anywhere on the farm and work on a fence, or if an animal's out, I can go track them down, or whatever the case may be. This is a viable vehicle on the farm as it sets already. That is why I am passionate about putting these small engines in an old wore-out pickup truck. Because I've done that to this one, and this one will do everything I need to do on the farm. So, I'm going to show you how I did it in hopes that maybe you can get yourself in a utility vehicle for $1,200. Maybe. Anyway, check out the video. I think you'll enjoy it. Hey y'all, Chris from Keyfarm. So the truck has the Predator 212 in it right now, and I've done all the speed tests and everything that I need to do with this engine. So now I'm going to put the 224 in it. But while we're putting the 224 in, I'm going to show you how I did all of this. So we're just going to take it step by step, and I'll fast forward through all the boring stuff and show you everything that's of value or interesting. All right. First thing I'm going to do, take my throttle loose. This is the original cable on the truck. It hooks to a generic cable through this little widget right here. I'm going to remove all that. Then I'm going to pull the engine. Alright y'all, pretty simple. Throttle cable off, chain off. Took the 4 nuts off of these bolts right here, and the motor lifts out. It's been about 10 minutes. It don't get no easier to work on than that. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to take off is the engine plate. The engine plate just bolts to this angle iron here. Just 4 more bolts. Alright, check it out. 4 3/8 bolts. And my 1/4 inch engine plate comes right off. Alright, so these top runners, I don't really have a name for them. But anyway, they bolt to the transmission mount back here, and then up here it's basically an angle iron rectangle, just something to mount these two. We'll pull it out here in a minute and take a look at it. Next thing to come off, I got a 3/8 bolt here, a 3/8 bolt here, and I got 2 in the front, so these runners are coming off next. One thing I will mention is I built the front piece up there a little bit taller than this back piece, and I had to add these 1.5" blocks in here. Now, I could have lowered the motor down quite a bit, but if you're going to have a tiller motor in a truck and you want it to be world famous, you kind of put it up high where people will see it and ask questions about it. You know what I'm saying? Now, going down the road, eventually it will be under my wheelbarrow / hood scoop, but for now I want it to be visible. Alright, now that we got that top stuff out of the way, so these are the original spots on the frame where the motor mounts went. What I've done is I just got a piece of angle iron bolted to them, and I got risers right here to get this bearing to line up with everything. Since we're working backwards, where this shaft is really depends on where the transmission was going to set, and that has everything to do with this piece right here. But since we're working backwards, and since it's a full disassemble and put back together, I'll leave this bar in because I think you can see in the video how it's bolted on there. but this will come out and I'll work backwards. And I still have to pull this front piece out. I tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and pull this piece out. Alright, like I said, this piece is only in there to have something to mount the front of these top frame rails to. It is really nothing more than angle iron welded into a rectangle. Alright, now you'll see under here that I had some shims, actually 1-inch spacers. I think I already mentioned, just to get the shaft right. Now this one, it's also setting on 1-inch spacers because that's setting on the frame. And once I bolted the transmission to this mount, that's when all of this was built. And I want you to also notice that I'm not above using a body shim. So these right here, you can get these at Harbor Freight. They come in a pack with several hundred of them in it. It's $8 or $10. This one here is 1/8 of an inch thick. So if you just need to cover a little bit of space to make your shaft come out right, like this one here is a 1/16 and this one's an 1/8. And that's what I had, one on the one side and one on the other, to make the shaft set where it didn't have any pressure on it. And it will come out. Now the sprocket, the set screws are locked down, and this coupler back here, the set screws are locked down, but I believe we can still get it out there. Maybe. Alright. This coupler is the most important piece. Some of y'all have heard me talk about it. Alright. This coupler is so important because this is where you connect all the new stuff, which is really easy to fabricate because you can order all the different stuff that works together, to the old transmission. So this right here is the eye of the clutch. Check this out. Now look, y'all, there's a lot of great videos on YouTube where people have just welded a shaft like this straight to the shaft on the transmission. And look, they got some pretty cool stuff out there, and I'm not knocking them. But I don't build my stuff that way. I build my stuff so I can take it apart and work on it without a grinder. So check this out. This is a clutch plate. This one's out of an Isuzu. By the way, I'm thinking about doing another truck, an Isuzu. But anyway, this is the eye of the clutch. So basically, what I did on this truck is I had this clutch disc, and I cut the eye out of there. And it came out, it was bigger, and I rounded it off. I gave it to a buddy of mine. He took it to a buddy of his at a machine shop. I ordered this coupler off of eBay. It's about $15. I sent both of these parts off, and they made me the one piece. And this is a 1-inch coupler, so it easily goes onto a new 1-inch shaft. The shaft is, I don't know, between $35 and $50 on eBay for a 3-foot piece. This is only half of that. But always buy a bigger piece than you need, because if you're like me, you're always going to use it on another project. So anyway, if you're going to do it like I do it, you got to have the eye of the clutch. That way, you can disassemble it and work on it. To me, that's the way something ought to be built, if you're building it for longevity. Alright, so to build this piece, what I did is I put a jack under that bell housing of that transmission. And I started with just a piece of angle iron, and I set it across the front there. You'll see down in there, let's get some light down there. You'll see that it's cut off, but then over here it lays on top. It's the same way on that side. It's cut off so it can set inside the frame, and then the top part sets on top of the frame. So that started with a single piece of angle iron. Well, you see that my angle iron was right where my shaft needed to be. And yes, I could have flipped it or turned it or lowered it. But I thought, you know what, that's a big piece of metal, and notching it's not going to hurt, especially after you build this top part. But to me, just those ears setting on top of the frame wasn't quite enough. So you see those 2 bolt holes right there? Those 2 nuts? That has angle iron. Yeah, you can see it right there. It's got angle iron that also bolts that piece to the frame. And It's the same thing on the other side. All right, so once I had that piece pretty much fabricated, these, I just decided how tall I wanted the motor to set up, and this angle iron is notched and this is welded in there. And mind you, it's not final welded. This will eventually come out and be completely welded, but I do want y'all to know that every bit of welding was done with that little bitty wire thread Harbor Freight welder. Wait. Did I just call that a wire thread welder? I think y'all know that I meant a wire fed welder. It's getting kind of late. I think it's $169, $179. What little bit of welding this project took was all done with that. So anyway, I just notched that. I put this top piece in there. You can see right there where I caught 2 more bell housing bolts. So I got one there, one there, one there, one there. And down underneath I could catch 2 more. But let's face it, y'all, with the horsepower we're dealing with, 4 bell housing bolts I think will last forever. Oh, one thing I did do is when I had the jack under the bell housing right there, I put a level on this nose. Now, that's not to say that from the factory it's set in there level, but I wanted it to set relatively level so that everything else up here could be level. So I bought a small level and I set it on that nose of that transmission. So the transmission is setting almost level, and then so is everything else because everything pretty much lines up to it. Alright, we're about to reverse the process. Alright y'all, so a short recap of what just happened. Number 1, pulled the chain off. Number 2, undid the throttle cable. Number 3, took the engine off. Number 4, pulled the engine plate off. Then came off those top runners. I guess we'll just call those part of the frame. And then this right here was that rectangle up front that holds the front of those. And then here's your whole drive mechanism together. Here's the coupler that I call the most important part. A bearing that mounts to the transmission mount right in front of it. 1-inch shaft. Keep in mind this is on a key. Now keep in mind we started out with a very large sprocket. 72 tooth, but it only went 14 miles an hour. So we went down to a 48. We still had enough power to pull the tractor on the trailer in first gear, and with this it'll run 22 miles an hour. And then of course a front bearing so that we got everything completely supported, and the transmission shaft isn't supporting anything. It's just turning. So that's where we're to so far. The engine bay is pretty empty. And over here is our 224 and our hood scoop. Stay tuned. Alright y'all, reassembly. So we got this piece here, and let's see if we can convince it to go in there. Well, that wasn't very difficult. This bearing sits upside down. So that's going to sit in there like so. And then got some spacers here. The short spacers, I believe, were back there. Longer spacers were up here. So long story short about spacers and shims and whatever you want to call them, when you tighten everything down, you want this to spin just that free. Now right now, you see that little bit of walk in that? That's where these come in that I showed you earlier. want to say that I probably had one right there like that. And one right there like that. And that took all the walk out of that. So you want to be able to tighten it down and still have it loose like that. And I can see the transmission shaft. I don't have this shaft pushed all the way back. I did at one point, but I realized I needed to have just a little bit of a gap in there. Which, I mean, if it's pressed against the throwout bearing, it's not really going to matter. But anyway, I can see the transmission shaft. Everything spins nice and free. So let's pop some bolts in and tighten everything down. Alright, so y'all, I got the input shaft put back in, and it still rolls free. It's all meshed up to the transmission. Everything's tight. I believe you could pick the truck up by it. Everything's tight there, everything's tight here, and we still roll just like we need to. Alright, next piece to go in is that rectangle piece up here that holds these top frame rails. And I suppose I should add that this just bolts to the front frame of the truck. Now it's got a little wave in it, so it bolts straight to it right there, straight to it right there. And it's an inch low right there, so it's got an inch spacer. Alright y'all, so the engine plate is next. I got it sitting on there right now. I should add that I put in these top frame rails right here off camera. They got 2 bolts right here, 2 bolts right here, 1 bolt right there, and 1 bolt right there. And because I had a pest control problem down here in the shop over the weekend, this is 3 days later. And by pest control, I mean rats, snakes, and spiders. Yes, my friends, the trifecta of pest control. So let's get this engine plate bolted on. Alright y'all, so I got the engine plate down in there, bolted in. Now time to set the 224 on. Ho! Whoa! That is not a 224. But this is where this truck is headed. That is gonna be awesome. Alright, now look, I really am putting the 224 in there next to compare it to the 212, but that is my 18 horse Duramax, and it's going to sit on there just like that. It's gonna hang out of that hole in the hood, and hopefully, I don't know if it'll fit, but it may be underneath that. Or maybe it just hangs out of the hood. But y'all, that right there is going to be a lot of fun. Alright, seriously, let's get that 224 in there. Alright y'all, there you have it. The 224 is in the truck. And you guys watched me start to finish on how I did it. Now, I got the breather off this. The breather needs to really go back on it until I hook the throttle cable up. This engine still needs to be broke in before I can run it down the road and do my speed comparison test to the 212. I do plan on making it faster, not by hopping up the engine or anything. That's not really my thing. I'll get into that in a minute. But by putting a different sprocket on it, less teeth should make the truck go faster. Well, it will, not should. It will. Anyway, when it comes to hopping up engines, a lot of the comments, people have said, hey, you know, do this and that, and all that's really cool, but there's already some channels out there that do a really great job of hopping up these engines. I started out watching Redbeard, and I've never even so much as put an aftermarket carburetor on one of these, but if I was going to take the governor out or do anything to a Predator 212, his channel's where I'd start. And I don't really need to make those videos because there's already a channel out there doing a great job at that. My things, I just build odd stuff, I guess. All right, so y'all, that's it, start to finish. If you have any questions, or if you just want to help out my channel, make a comment down below and hit that thumbs up button. does it go that way? Is it that way? I think it's that way. Anyway, hit that thumbs up button. Love God, love people, and watch some of these other videos when they pop up. There should be one here, and one here, and one down here, and one down there.